Well, good day, everyone. Good day, everybody. How are we doing today, my friends out there in internet land? How are you doing in Edmonton area and Sherwood Park and all over Alberta and beyond? Welcome. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dune and Friends. Uh, Thank you for joining us today. And today we have a wonderful guest joining us. He has quite an eclectic background and music background going back many decades. And we have Mr. Garry Keiller joining us today. Let me do a quick introduction of uh, Garry and his bio for you before we have him on here with us for an hour and a bit, folks. So hopefully you can hear me. And if you're having trouble hearing me now, let me know. But hopefully things are coming through loud and clear. So Garry Keiller was born in Edinburgh, Scotland. His family immigrated to Canada in 1955. Now, his father was a RAF Lancaster pilot during World War II, and he joined the Canadian Airforce. Now, music was always playing at home, and mother's opera and classical, and father's jazz. On January 3rd, 1964, Jack Parr shows a clip of the Beatles 1 month before they appeared on the Ed Sullivan show. Garry's whole concept of music changed instantly, and classical records were set aside. And so in July 1965, Garry's father was transferred to the number 3 fighter wing, Zweibrucken Germany. Now, if I say that incorrectly, please forgive me, and Garry will correct me when he comes on, I'm sure. For 4-year assignment, and in March 1967, somebody plays Purple Haze on the jukebox at the youth club. It was a life-changing moment for Garry, and he started playing guitar. 6 months later, he joined the first band. And in 1968 to 69, Garry worked at CFN-Z, Canadian Forces News Zweibrucken, again as a DJ this time. And in July 1969, he became a Canadian citizen, returned to Canada there in July 69, and got his first job and with an insurance company in Winnipeg. And he transferred to Edmonton in 1976. So Garry worked in the financial services industry until 1986, and he started his own firm with a partner, and they specialized in retirement, financial, and real estate planning. Now, he met Norma Lockhart in September 1999, and they were married in New Orleans in January 1st, 2001. Look at that, 010101. That's I don't know if you planned that, Garry and Norma, but Norma and Garry share a passion for travel and fine single malt whiskeys. Now, currently, Garry is involved in a number of music projects while enjoying his well-earned retirement since December 2016. So, Garry, with that introduction, folks, help me in welcoming our special guest today, Mr. Garry Keiller. So, Garry, welcome to our conversation, and thank you for joining us today, my friend. How are you doing, Garry?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on, Dune.
Wonderful. Tell us an extended kind of story of how you got here. I know I share out your bio with our viewers, but maybe fill it in a little bit before we continue, Garry.
Well, how I got to Edmonton. I was in Winnipeg working for an insurance company, and I ended up sort of a roving helper at different branches across the country. So if somebody was needed in Ottawa or wherever, I would be sent there for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or two. I got transferred to Edmonton in '76, and it was supposed to be a temporary assignment for a couple of months, and I'm still here. So I left that company, went to work for an independent advisor somewhere around 1980, I think, and then left that, and my partner and I started our own firm in '86. And packed it in, like you said, December of 2016.
Yeah. Hey, wonderful. Thank you for filling those in for us. Gary, could you maybe turn up your gain on your mic ever so slightly? So slightly. That would be awesome.
How's that?
I think it's great.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we want you front and center, my friend. I can be in the background for this hour here, but we want you in the front and center. So in this hour, folks, we're going to get to know Gary quite a bit more than perhaps, many of you out there who are watching now and later knows Gary through different interactions that you have, whether it's music or otherwise. But our hope is that through this hour, you learn a lot more about Gary and his background and what makes him tick. So tell us, in terms of music, I know you have quite a diverse set of music kind of genre that you play. Tell us a bit about that, the full spectrum there.
Well, as you pointed out, it was in Zweibrucken, Germany, where I first picked up a guitar because somebody put this tune on a jukebox down in the youth club, and the sound came out like something I'd never heard before. Mm-hmm. I'd been used to hearing guitar sounds from Beatles and Stones, and usually a very clean Gretsch or Rickenbacker style, and out came this amazing sound out of a jukebox. I had no idea what it was. Mm-hmm. So I found out what it was. Yeah, it was a guitar, but something I'd never heard before, and I got hooked. And so I ran down to the local music store in downtown Zweibrucken, and can't remember what the first guitar cost me. I think it was maybe about 30 or 40 Deutschmarks at the time, maybe $15 or something, and just started practicing. And 6 months later, I was asked to get involved with a couple of guys and in my very first band. I think I got the gig because I could, instead of going from a major to a seventh, I would go from a major to a ninth, and nobody had ever seen a ninth before. So I think that's why I got the gig, because I could play D9.
Oh, there you go. So again, finding any way to kind of stand out from the crowd.
That's right.
And you knew that early on,
Right.
Many of us takes many decades before we figure that out, but you figured that out, you were in your teens back then when you figured this out?
Yeah, well, gosh, how old would I have been? I'm scared to say. I think I was 16. And what happened was, though, kind of funny, I was playing left-handed. And I didn't realize that I was playing left-handed because I bought a book of guitar chords. It was all in Deutsch, of course, and I didn't speak German. So, I just looked at the little chord patterns and but I was playing left-handed and didn't realize that. So the strings were reversed, obviously. No big deal. A friend of mine came over who played, and he took one look and says, "Why are you holding it upside down?" So I had to turn around and start all over again.
Oh man, that is a great story. Fantastic story of, the human brain is so powerful, and it gets used to what it gets used to, and it knows what it knows until we challenge it otherwise, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Great story. Now, who else does that in our sort of musical kind of, do you know of anybody who sort of does that and continues to do that? I think there's some people.
Anybody that we might know personally?
Yeah,
I don't know of anyone personal, but there are a few guitar players that do play upside down with the strings the wrong way. Albert King, probably the most notable. He played a flying V left-handed with strings reversed. Wow. Doyle Bramwell, who used to play with the Archangels and does a lot of work with Eric Clapton now, he plays literally upside down. So there's two.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell our viewers this. We did not coordinate the flowery shirt. Now, so you and I had somehow picked a flowery shirt to put on for this kind of conversation. I think I know why. A viewer would kind of know why, because we're going to talk about some international music, and that might be the inspiration for these flowery shirts.
No, the shirts, I'm certainly a product of the 60s. And, back in the 60s, anything, when we're living in Europe, Carnaby Street was the big thing. And so, all of the fashion statements came out of Carnaby Street in London, and Paisley was a big thing. And I've just sort of regressed back to those days. Yeah. And so anytime I'm over in London, I have my favorite clothing store, and I got to know the family quite well.
Yeah.
I would pop in there and buy some more shirts and jackets. And
There you go. Well, I would not have these flowery shirts if it wasn't for one of the bands that I play in called the Sunflower Band. The Sunflower Band, they like to kind of pick different shirts, and the band leader would just say, well, you like this one? And so he'll pick it up for all four of us or whatever. And so all of these flowery shirts that I have is based on that band there. I don't think I would have went out and bought it for myself. So tell us, now, this might be a great time to bring up some photos to maybe take us through a journey of your music kind of commentary. Now, while I go ahead and cue that up, just tell us about your interest in, is it Eastern music or other world kind of regions? Tell us about that.
Yeah, world music. I've got some neat photos and I think a couple of vids that I sent you on this, but again, I think this all starts way back when I was a little kid, listening to various kinds of music at home because it was always playing. So like opera and classical and jazz. So that was constantly playing. And that was pretty diverse right then and there, I think. What happened was in there we go. That's me. I think I was 17 years old there. That's in Zweibrucken. And that would be 1968, I guess. Yeah, maybe 1968. And I don't know why the bass players give me stink eye there, but maybe I was on the wrong chord. Who knows? Yeah. But so back to what I was just saying. And it was 1965. A band called the Beatles came out with this brilliant album, Rubber Soul. And the second cut on Rubber Soul is Norwegian Wood. And so I heard the sound on there and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I go, what is this phenomenal, mystical sound? I had no idea what it was. And later on found out it was this thing called a sitar. A few years later, 3 years later or so, 1968, the movie Monterey Pop was released from the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival, which was sort of the first great rock festival. And they had Hendrix, they had The Who, they had the Byrds. I mean, there was a huge lineup. And one evening, it was closed off by Ravi Shankar. And so I'm watching this movie, and all of a sudden, there's the sound. My gosh. And I can't remember what rock they were playing, but we had Alaraka on tabla, was maybe one of the finest tabla players who ever lived. And I just became totally engrossed by that music, and I've been listening to it ever since.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. Again, how people influence people through what they do in life. We influence others in ways that we can't even imagine sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
Here you are in the thick of things.
Okay, that needs explanation. Somewhere circa 1980, I was involved in, I think, Edmonton's first real punk band. And yeah, that's me with two eyes and hair on the Flying V. And that was a lot of fun playing in the punk band. It was aggressive. And did that for a couple of years. And actually, I'm still in contact with some of the guys from there. The other guitar player, Robin, and he lives in Vancouver now. Popped out to visit him once. And so, yeah, we keep in contact. But that was a fun group. But pretty raw, pretty undisciplined. But again, a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just look and I see the coil, cable there. That brings back so many memories just related to that coil cable. Hey, that was the way we did things back then, right?
I still use a curly cord. I still use one. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. What year did you say that was again?
That could be somewhere around 1980. Actually, that photograph was taken by the Edmonton Journal and ended up in the Journal. Which caused me a little bit of concern because I was dealing with a clientele in retirement, financial, and estate planning and tax planning. And I thought, gee, if my clients see me on stage in my punk band, So I wasn't too thrilled about that photograph appearing in the Edmonton Journal.
Yeah. These was the day. In fact, I heard stories from our other guests who says they actually put music aside because it was not acceptable to be playing certain kind of music publicly. Anyway, when you are a certain kind of profession, I'm glad that we sort of move away from that somewhat these days.
Well, I mean, I didn't avoid it. I mean, but again, as I said, the fact that picture showed up, I thought, oh, that might not be too cool. But it was fine. I never did get any negative feedback. Thank goodness, anybody.
Yeah. Here are the sitars and all that stuff. Okay. Wonderful.
Okay, this we have Sharmila Mathur on sitar. She was giving me sitar lessons. And then I realized that I'd started playing sitar way too late in life. I should have started about age 5 or 6. But I would never be a sitarist. Then our tabla player there is Ojas Joshi, another brilliant musician. And we still work together. As a matter of fact, we've got a live broadcast to be broadcast in India at the end of this month. We have to start at 8 o'clock in the morning our time. I'm retired, man. I don't have an 8 a.m. on my clock. And so we've done some work together. We've played shows together. And right now we're in the middle of a recording project where we're writing material and recording it. We also have the most wonderful vocalist, Shruti Nair, this young woman she's a classically trained Carnatic singer. And I mean, I get shivers up my spine when I hear her sing. It's just absolutely flawless and absolutely beautiful. So we're working hard on that, and there'll be more to come.
That's fantastic. Now, how many strings does the typical sitar have?
Probably, it can vary. I think mine has a total of, I think it's 18.
Wow.
You have 11 sympathetic, or maybe it's 13. I can't remember. 11. Yeah. I've got a couple of sitars, so I'm confused one with the other. But sympathetic strings, there's one main playing string. And you spend most of your time on the one main playing string. There's another string that you can fret as well. And but the sympathetics give you that real sitar sound because they ring with sympathetic vibration, which is beautiful sound. People said to me, "Well, you're a guitar player. Shouldn't it be too hard?" No, the sitar is insanely difficult to play. I mean, it has strings and it has frets. That ends a similarity with the guitar. And it's a magnificent instrument. And when you play it, you can actually feel the instrument vibrating. It's a wonderful sensation.
I'm going to ask, I wonder if you have ever seen or known about or have played one of these instruments is in the Vietnamese sort of tradition where it's actually just one string and no frets, one string just hanging loose by itself. And you pick on it and you just bend this thing. Basically, you have you seen that?
Seen those. I've actually seen them in action in travels. I've seen them played, and I think in other countries other than Vietnam, they have similar instruments as well. Where you just play on one string.
Yeah, imagine breaking a string there.
Oh yeah, you're toast. Well, if you break your main playing string on a sitar, you're done.
Yeah, it doesn't sound quite like a sitar anymore, hey?
Well, I'll tell you, putting a string on, you can't do it quickly. You can on the guitar. You can replace a string on the guitar in a matter of minutes. With a sitar, it's a little bit more involved. Yeah.
There you go. Cool.
What's this? Oh, yeah. This is the wind spear, and beside me is Ojas Joshi on the tabla, Sharmila, and other people there are University of Alberta music students, ethnomusicology students. And we would play shows, and this one happened to be at the Wind Spear, and that was quite an experience playing on that stage. I've never heard such amazing sound in my life. Coming back, because if you've been to the Wind Spear, they've got that lovely dome in the ceiling which reflects sound back to you, and the sound was absolutely impeccable in there. So it was a wonderful gig.
Yeah. I'm just again struck by the diversity of obviously when you play your rock or blues gigs and all of those sort of venues, you're there with your electric guitar or with your keys and keyboard and whatnot. That is a far cry from this scenario with the sitar and very kind of earthy instruments.
Oh, earthy, a good word. Yeah. Yeah, it's diverse in terms of the style of music, and the Indian music, the classical music, and indeed folk music. I mean, I could go on forever talking about it, and believe me, Dune, my knowledge is very, very slight. Indian music is amazingly complex and very, very difficult, I found, to learn. I've learned a little bit thanks to my friends Ojas and Sharmila, and Shruti have helped me out so much in understanding the music. But as I said, it would take a lifetime for me to properly understand the complexity of Indian music.
Which is kind of interesting. And I want to share a quick kind of anecdotal story that sort of backs that up a little bit. So as you know, I play a lot of Vietnamese music lately with a number of Vietnamese bands, and and that would be something that I would hear, let's say, from people who don't play that music, and they say, oh, it looks to be typically this very kind of one-dimensional, if you will, right? From an outsider, it seems one-dimensional. And then, when you get inside and, go through all this stuff, you realize that there's many different variations and dimensions to it and whatever have you. And then I look out and I would see my Vietnamese friends say the same thing about, English music that we have here. I say, oh, well, that's fairly one-dimensional, but our music is richer and more, So the same thing, the same phenomenon. From afar, it appears to be, kind of one-dimensional. And then when you get deep into it, you realize there's many nuances and many dimensions to it that outsiders, quote unquote, don't see or appreciate.
Well, with the Indian music, as I said, I've learned just a tiny wee bit. But what became apparent to me as I started working with Sharmila and Ojas is that the music, the culture, the spirituality, the religion, I mean, it all, to me, rightly or I may be wrong on this, but to me, it all seems to be intertwined somehow. And there's an incredible depth and richness to the music. A friend of mine, she was a client of mine, and she became a good friend, was a violinist with the Edmonton Symphony. And I can't remember who was playing it. Oh, it was Anushka Shankar when she played here first. And so I took her along with my wife, Norma. We went to see Anushka. And this was a classically trained violinist with the symphony. And she said, Garry, I don't understand this music at all. And I said, it doesn't matter. Like, let's come with me and we'll listen to the concert and we'll talk afterwards. And at the end of the concert, she said to me, I still don't understand what happened, but it was beautiful. And so, and my wife, Norma, who had never been exposed really to Indian classical music, really, really enjoys going to these concerts, especially when the tabla player kicks in. Yeah. That's when she gets really excited.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, some more photos. There's Norma there. And
yeah, now beside Norma, Shubin Chatterjee, Pandit Shubin Chatterjee, an absolutely brilliant tabla player. And then the chap beside me is Pandit Vishwa Mohan Bhatt. Panditji was a disciple of Ravi Shankar. He is Sharmila's guru. And he's been playing here a few times. How I got to meet them is Vishwa was playing at the folk festival, the Edmonton Folk Festival. I think he had Ram Kumar Mishra on tabla. I think Ramji was on, I can't remember now. Anyway, they comped us, so we went to see, and that's the first time I actually heard Vishwa play. And he plays slide. He calls it the Mohan Veena, and it's basically a guitar that he's turned into an Indian Veena with sympathetic strings, and it's a slide. Okay, he plays with a slide, very intricate, and an amazing individual, world-renowned musician. He's played all over the world globally. He played for the Queen. He was a good friend of George Harrison's, by the way, and I was wondering about the validity, and then I watched the documentary that was done on George Harrison, All Things Must Pass, and there's a scene there with George sitting beside Vishwa. I thought, okay, this is cool, right? So, but a brilliant musician and become a very good friend, and Shubin as well.
Yeah, you bet. Now, just for the benefit of some of our viewers who watch now and later, who may not understand what you mean by sympathetic string, perhaps give us a quick lesson on sympathetic strings.
Okay, Physics 101.
There you go.
So it's a string that will vibrate in sympathy with another string. So if I've got one of the strings tuned, let's say to C, and these are very light and highly strung strings, by the way. If it's tuned to C and I hit a C on the main playing string, the sympathetic string will vibrate in sympathy. So it's just sympathetic vibration.
Oh, wow. So dare I say it harmonizes in the
Well,
background?
it's not harmony. It wouldn't be harmony. It's the same note. So it wouldn't be harmony. It's the exact same note. But it gives you that beautiful ringing after sound when the note is plucked on the sitar, or indeed sarangi, or any of the other Indian instruments that have sympathetics. You will hear that ringing underneath.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's sort of like built-in reverb / delay kind of thing.
Yeah, reverb. Yeah, it gives you a nice, but it's a beautiful sound.
See, now I've learned something. I heard sympathetic and say, well, okay, it could mean this, could mean that. I'm not sure. I haven't looked it up. And
I'll tell you what. You ring up Sharmila. Sharmila runs a music school. It's the Indian music school, Indian Music Academy here in Edmonton, and she teaches sitar. Shruti teaches vocal. And they have other teachers who teach different disciplines and instruments. So if you're ever interested in trying out a sitar, you can ring up Sharmila and give it a go.
Cool. Well, somebody mentioned I should try out banjo, so that's also somewhat difficult as well. I understand. So tell us about this photo.
I wasn't going to send you that one. I was going to send you a different one, but this is one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And if
I will enlarge it then.
If Sharmila is watching right now, she's probably rolling over on the floor laughing. Here's what happened. Long story, and I'll try to keep it fairly short. That's Anushka Shankar. And she was here in town with her father, Pandit Ravi Shankar, to play a concert at the Windsphere. So Sharmila had rung me up and said, that's Sharmila, by the way, on the left, and then my wife, Norma, myself, and Anushka. So Sharmila rang me up and said, can I borrow your sitar? We're going to have a static display at the Windsphere in the main lobby area so people can see and touch a sitar prior to going into the concert hall for the concert. I said, great. So they picked up my sitar and off they went. So Norma and I get to the Windsphere, and there's Sharmila with my sitar, and fine. We go into the concert. Brilliant, of course. I mean, I've idolized Ravi Shankar since 1968. And so finally got to see him. And so we come back out, this concert's over, and the main lobby area is deserted. My sitar is not there. Oh, no problem. Sharmila, Sanjay will bring it home. And just then Sanjay, that's Sharmila's husband, stuck his head around the corner and said, Garry, come. So we went back to pick up my sitar, and we were escorted into the green room where I met Ravi Shankar. And the truth of the matter, Dune, is I don't really remember an awful lot about that. I have never been so overcome in my life. And I do remember walking up to Panditji, and I pranam and said, Panditji, that was magnificent. I don't remember what happened after that, and this is the gospel truth. My wife had to remind me that Ravi Shankar put his hands over mine and said, you are a musician. And then we walked out, and I do remember acknowledging Panditji's wife as I walked out because I recognized her. So we're standing outside the green room, and I am I can't describe the state of my brain at that time, but it certainly wasn't there. And Anushka was walking by. She just finished getting changed. And of course, Sharmila knows the Shankar family. It's Anushka. So Anushka came over and is standing beside me. So Sharmila and Anushka are having a nice chat. And I thought, I have to say something to Anushka. And Sharmila and my wife and Sanjay will tell you this. I turned to Anushka to say something. All that came out of my mouth was, I was so overcome for having met my idol that I could not talk. And that precise moment, Anushka put her hand on my arm and said, talk much, and Sanjay took the photo at that precise moment. So it's one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, right?
Yeah. Again, the power of experiences and the power of, being with the people that you are with. Thank you for sharing that. I know Gary Thomas chimed in here. Awesome. Gary Thomas says,
hey, Gary, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, he says Garry Keiller is awesome. Great guest, Dune. Way to go. So thank you, Garry, for joining us here on this broadcast. So in terms of the next one, yeah, this is the one I use for the advertising photo there. Is it in, well, I know where this is, but go ahead and tell us the story.
Well, I was warned not to do this. That's the travel guitar that Norma had bought for me. And we were going to be over for a month on this one particular trip, and one of the stops was Athens. I was a huge Greek mythology fan when I was a kid, like 12 years old, and I was reading the Iliad and the Odyssey and Beowulf and all these types of mythology. And so the chance to get up to the Acropolis was something that I really, really wanted to do. So Norma says, hey, bring the travel guitar and get a nice picture of you playing it at the Acropolis. Well, we had hired a private guide to take us around Athens, the Acropolis, Temple of Zeus, and all of these places. And he warned me, he said, don't do it. He said, you're not allowed. They will confiscate it. If you are taking a picture that could be construed as advertising a product, you're in deep trouble and they will take it away from you. So Norma said, oh, go ahead and do it anyway. So I quickly hauled the thing out. She took the snap. I stuck it back in the case. And thank goodness the Acropolis police didn't see me.
Yeah, and certainly your intent was, is all square with what the rules was, but it's a matter of if they were to misinterpret what your intent was.
Well, exactly. I mean, I never did post that on the website of the manufacturer of that particular travel guitar or anything like that, so nobody would know what it is, really. But yeah, no, they were pretty strict, and our guide really warned me about it, but we took the chance. I like the shot. It's great.
Yeah, no, great shot.
Yeah.
Actually, let me just say here, that is just a sort of a justification of, here's this modern looking headless guitar with that kind of tuning, set up there in this, obviously ancient ruins, right?
Well, the birthplace of democracy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay. What a night that was. That's with Lex Justice. And by the way, I do want to say, while I remember, is if it hadn't been for my buddy Gary Thomas, I never would have met Lex. Gary was, as you know, Gary hosts a lot of, and Gary well, Dune, I know.
You bet,
Gary was hosting a number of jams around town, and at one particular jam, this is quite some years ago now, I popped in to say hi to Gary and jump on stage, and this guy jumps on stage and grabs the bass, and I had no idea who he was, and away we go. We had a great set. And then after we got off stage, shook hands, hi, pleased to meet you. And it was Lex Justice. And so we would jam off and on and off and on. And he decided to put his reggae group together, Lex Justice. And he rang me up and said, I want you to play second guitar. And I said, oh, man, I mean, I can't play reggae. I mean, I don't have the feel or the groove for reggae. And he said, oh, you can do it. You can do it. So I worked hard. And we put together, this is one of the lineups. We have rotating drummers and bass players. This particular lineup, we've got Jerry Kinjo on bass from Calgary, Billy Hobson on drums, local guy, and Bill's a legend in this town. Many will know Billy Hobson. Nick Partridge on keys, brilliant keyboard player who lives in Red Deer. Lex and myself. Our main bass player, Steve Farrell, couldn't make that particular gig, so Lex rang up Jory and said, "Come on up from Calgary." And if Bill can't do the gig for other, he's very much in demand on the drums. We have Greg Williamson, another brilliant musician, drummer, and our first drummer was actually a chap from I think Sacramento in California. Aguna's son, who's got quite a career behind him, playing with some well-known people, and our first bass player was from the Widemouth Mason, Earl Pereira, originally from Widemouth Mason, who lives in Saskatoon. So as you can imagine, getting together for rehearsals is a bit of a challenge, flying Aguna in from California and Earl coming in from Toontown. So for a series of gigs, they would come in. We would have one marathon rehearsal, 7-hour rehearsal, and just do a set of gigs. So that's the Blues on White. And that was a great night. They had packed about 400 people into that place.
Wow.
What a night that was, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So like I said, if it hadn't been for my mate, Gary Thomas, I never would have probably met Lex Justice and got the gig. So.
Now I know Roxanne chimed in here. She says, Gary, I've enjoyed your jamming with you and always follow your travels.
Oh, hi, Roxanne. How you doing?
Wonderful. So just the next photo here, tell us about this one. Yeah, this is going back a little bit further in time.
Okay, this is New Orleans, Louisiana. The fellow there with me is my brother, E.J. Phillips. How I met, I was down in New Orleans, I think it was 1993. I was down in New Orleans on a conference. And we were having dinner at this restaurant, Open Courtyard Restaurant. And the main entrance was on Royal Avenue. And then the next street over was Bourbon, and there's an open courtyard, so you could hear what was happening on Bourbon Street. And I heard this guitar player, and the man's killing me. He's playing Hendrix and just doing an absolutely gorgeous job of it. So after the dinner, I excused myself and ran up Bourbon Street until I found the sound and walked into this long, narrow bar. And a lot of the bars in New Orleans, you think that the roof's going to come in on your head. I mean, these are very, very old buildings. So I went in, there was these 3 guys on this tiny little stage. How they got a drum kit and a drummer and 2 guys on that tiny stage. And it was about 4 feet off the floor. How they got on there, I have no idea. So they're doing a brilliant job. So the server came over, Nguyen came over, and I ordered a drink. And I said, whatever the fellas are in the band are drinking, send up a round on me. So the band takes a break, and the guitar player, EJ, comes over and says, hey, man, thanks for the drink. And so we get into a little bit of the call, where are you from? I said, I'm from Canada and all this stuff. And I said, that guitar you're playing, man, has got a small headstock. It looks like a pre-CBS. He said, well, no, it's a reissue. He said, you play guitar? And I said, well, and at this time, Dune, I'd actually quit playing guitar for years. I just stopped playing. So I hadn't played for a long time. And he said, well, come take a look at it. So, sorry, I actually got to turn off my phone here. So he gives me the guitar, and it's not plugged in. So he says, do something. So I play a couple of little licks. And the bass player, I've forgotten his name, grabs the headstock of the guitar and puts it up to his ears so he can hear what I'm doing. And then give the guitar back. I sit down, order another drink. EJ and the guys get back up, and he does 2 tunes. And then, to my horror, says, hey, y'all, we got this guitar player coming down from Canada. They're going to play for you right now. And I almost fainted. Blind terror, because I hadn't played in a while. Not only that, I've got incredibly weak hands. So, I mean, I'm playing 9s. EJ's playing 11s. Okay? So he's got plumbing. I got to play this thing. And anyhow, so he calls me up. And there's no room on the stage. He stays on the stage to sing. He hands the guitar down to me. And I don't know what to do. And when I say I was terrified, I'm not kidding. My knees were shaking. And here I am in this bar in New Orleans, this packed place. So he said, what do you want to play? And I just, my mind went blank. I said, I don't know. He said, okay, man, Red House in A. So, oh yeah, I remember the intro, but now it's a 4-bar guitar intro. Before the band kicks in at the top of the 5th. And we're in the 4th bar, and I dropped 1 beat out of the 4th bar. And I thought, oh, I'm dead. And the bass player and drummer kind of looked at each other like amateur. And a good bass player and a good drummer share the same brain, right? It was brilliant. And man, they covered, and they hit the 1 with me, which was phenomenal. So they covered for me. So I finished the song. Wonderful response from the audience. And EJ says, oh, man, do some more. So I played a couple of tunes. And, man, I floated back to my hotel. My feet didn't touch the ground. 3 months later, I was back in New Orleans to do it again. So when Norma and I decided to get married, maybe we should go to Scotland. And I thought, why not New Orleans? And so EJ was my best man. And one of the servers, that's the Funky Pirate Blues Bar, by the way. That's where I stole the names from my email address, Funky Pirate. I just wanted one more point on this. A few years ago, I met a chap here in town by the name of Troy Turner. You know who Troy is, of course. And Troy's from Louisiana, New Orleans. And so it was at a jam. I went over and introduced myself and sat down. And we started comparing notes. Son of a gun, if we know the same people, we jam with the same people. He lived with EJ, right? So talk about a coincidence. So anytime we see each other, sit down, have a nice little stroll down memory lane and reminiscing about times in New Orleans.
Let me review some of the comments that's been coming in here, Garry.
Okay.
I've displayed them, but yeah, you were talking, so let me just sound it out for the folks here for you if you can't read it on the screen. Yeah, you see that from Quinn? He says, "Don't call Garry Keiller British." Laugh out loud. Love your bandmate. Your story is so cool.
Oh, Quinn. You had Quinn on your show a wee while ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
He was one of the fun guys. He's a fascinating individual and a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah. You know, and you guys are bandmates in one of the bands that you're in, right?
Yeah, the punk band.
Yeah. And then your other bandmate in another band, Sharon, chimed in here and said, "Hi, Garry and Dune. It's always a pleasure playing with you, Garry." So you got some friends watching and commenting.
Sharon you had Sharon on the show, about a week or so ago or something like that? Yeah, and what a performer. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, you've seen him on stage. And being on stage with him is so much fun and it's exciting. And he and I have a wonderful time together on stage. He uses a wireless mic and I use wireless. So depending on where we're playing, I remember when we were playing at the Pearl showroom, he took off, I think, stage right, and I took off stage left, and we ran around the perimeter and met at the very back of the Pearl showroom, and then came back down again. And we just have a great time on stage together.
Fantastic. In other words, you're putting on a show. You don't just play music.
Well, if you're playing with Sharon Huns, you have no choice but to put on a show.
Yeah. And of course, here's Gavin Keiller. I presume perhaps a relative of yours.
I have no idea who that might be.
Yes.
Hey, bro. That's my little brother. That's my little brother.
Can you read the text in that size?
I don't have my computer glasses on.
I'll read it out to you. Gavin said, "When the waitress from hell, quick, give me money for a tip."
Okay, this is funny. When I went back the second time to New Orleans, I had rung up my brother Gavin down in Calgary and said, "What you doing in July?" And he had some plans. I said, "Can you give me a week of your time?" "Sure." "Why?" "We're going to New Orleans." And I don't think he believed me until I actually got the plane tickets. So we go down to New Orleans, and as I said, we drop off our stuff at the flat I was renting, and I was on Toulouse. We walk down Bourbon Street, and there, standing in front of the bar, is EJ. And he saw me, and they called me Canada for a couple of years before they decided to ask what my real name was. So, "Hey, Canada," and he grabbed me and hauled me in. Guitar back on stage, and left my brother standing outside. Anyway, so Gavin came in. We sit down, and the server, Nguyen, I call her the voodoo queen. She would come over, and I'd order drinks, and I would throw a tip on the tray. And it was time for my brother to pay for the round, so he threw a quarter on the tray. And Gwen gave him the evil eye like I've never seen before, the stink eye. And she looked at my brother and said, "You can do better than that, boy." And my poor brother shrunk in terror, digging for more change, right? So yeah, that's my brother and Gwen, the server. Yeah.
There you go. And of course, Mr. Jim Dick joining in here, and another bandmate of yours.
Oh my gosh, hey buddy.
Jim says, "You're rocking the interview, Garry."
Oh, thank you.
I agree with Jim. This is fun. This is great.
Jim's another great guy to play with, and it was so cool that Quinn decided to put this thing together with Emmett Van Etten, who's a powerhouse drummer, to say the least, magnificent player, and asked me if I would join. I was quite flattered by it. So, and then I found Jim was going to be involved. Oh, this is going to be just a fun lineup, good lineup.
Yeah.
Jim, a good player, keys and guitar. Yeah.
You bet. So many of these wonderful and awesome players, also really incredible and great human beings, which is one of the huge benefit of associating with people who are into music and also just awesome, fantastic people as well, right?
I've really found that, and my wife has certainly found that out too. A good 80, I'm going to guess a good 80% of the people I've played with in this town in bands have been as a result of meeting them at jam sessions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of the jam. You get to meet great people and great musicians. And another thing is, I was over at Charmiller's the other day, just in Charmiller, we were tracking a new song that we're working on. And I said, all of these wonderful musicians I've met, it seems the more advanced they are, or the more competent, or the better they are as musicians, the more humble they become.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you hit a certain degree of maturity as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, the first thing that disappears is ego.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I was 27, ego gratification on stage was something that I wanted. I mean, I want the solos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with Lex Justice, I'm the rhythm guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
I get maybe 3 solos a night, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
thrilled to be part of the rhythm section. With
Mm-hmm.
Mars, I'm the second guitar player. Dave Nazar, lead guitar player. Frankly, he does a better job than I do. And so I play rhythm guitar, acoustic guitar, and keys.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think once you hit a certain level of experience, whether you want to call it maturity, I don't know, you realize that the sound of the band and what's best for the band is what counts, and not your own personal, ego. Get it out of the way.
You bet. And yeah, you focus on the bigger picture, and you also find enjoyment in everything rather than the fleeting solo or whatever it is, the fleeting the spotlight. You find joy in all aspects of, band membership and performances.
Yeah.
Great. Let's take a look at the next photo and tell us the story of this one. Go ahead.
Okay. This is on a train, a steam train that runs from Fort William up to Mallaig in the Scottish Highlands. The name of the train is the Jacobite Express, but it's better known to most people as the Hogwarts Express.
Oh, really?
This is the actual train that was used in the Harry Potter movies. And yes, you go across the Glenfinnan Viaduct, and it's the most beautiful train ride. If any of you are up there in the Highlands and you're in Fort William, book ahead and get a ride on this train. It's an 85-mile round trip, and you stop in a few places. You end up in a little fishing village of Mallaig to have some of the most amazing seafood you've ever tasted. And it's just a beautiful train ride. So yeah, there, the Harry Potter Express. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
Well, my wife was a big Harry Potter's fan, so I kind of surprised her with that little trip. Yeah.
Wow. You gained lots of brownie points with that trip there.
Oh,
it sounds like.
Yeah, brownie points mean she keeps, feeding me. And
she great smile on her, as I always sort of see, and I know she come to quite a few of the music performances, even local jams with you as well.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at jams and performances, and she would often be sitting right next to you and just enjoying the whole thing as well.
Well, I mean, number one, she's a real music lover. She doesn't play music, but she's always loved music, and she tells me that one of the reasons she married me was because I could play Hendrix.
There you go. You might be the first. You might be the first one to admit that music actually helped you with the ladies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think she might be saying that tongue in cheek, but anyway, she will say that. She will say that.
It's a blessing when your partner and spouse have a similar interest in music. It doesn't happen for everybody, but I'm glad you guys found that together as well.
Well, she loves music, and she loves going to concerts and gigs, and she's been to the shows we've done. She comes out to jams. And the other thing is she loves all the people that she has met coming out to jams. Mm-hmm. Going to jams for me and for Norm as well is very much a social thing. It's a lot of fellowship. Sure, mm-hmm. And some jams are really packed. I mean, you might go to a jam and you might be lucky to get 4 tunes in because there are just so many players that want to get up. But but you're there to socialize, fellowship, listen to your fellow musicians, and just have a really nice time. That's what jams are to me. Yeah.
You bet. I mean, if you go to jams and say to yourself, even if I don't get to play at all, I would still have a good time.
Yeah.
That would be an awesome baseline to kind of work from.
Exactly. Yeah. This picture, believe it or not, this is the flat that Jimi Hendrix lived in London, England. It's also the building that Handel lived in. You know, Handel's Messiah, he lived in the same building, not at the same time, obviously, but that's Hendrix Flat. And it was taken over and turned into a museum and has been redone exactly as it was when Jimmy and his girlfriend Linda Keith lived there, from photographs. And there's actually a video of Hendrix being interviewed lying on that bed. That guitar there is very much like the guitar that Noel Redding played on the song Little Miss Strange that he had written. The actual guitar is out in the case. And of course, to me, this was Mecca, right? To go into Jimi Hendrix's room in London. So that was quite the thing.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's awesome stories in your travel there. So this one here.
Notice the name, right? That's my family, actually. Keiller's Marmalade is one of the most famous marmalade products in the UK. And I haven't made it all the way back. I've only traced family back to about 1858. And prior to that, it gets very difficult to go back. But my understanding is sort of great Uncle James, who bought these sour Seville oranges off a ship, brought them home to his wife, Janet. She made this preserve, which became famous as Keiller's Marmalade. Yeah. And so this is on a ship. It was actually a research ship in Dundee, Scotland is where the family's actually from originally. And so my cousin and I went on board, and there's all of these things of Keiller's Marmalade. So, that is too cool. Now, Norma and I have gone back to this wonderful island. This is the island of Islay, which is off the west coast of Scotland in the Inner Hebrides. And in my opinion, and my wife's opinion, the finest single malt whiskeys in the world come from that little island. Population about 3,000 humans, about 100,000 sheep. And seriously, I'm not kidding. So we were in Port Charlotte, and we stayed in Port Charlotte, a population maybe 500. I don't even think it's 500. And there's a hotel, the Port Charlotte Hotel, and this little bar. And it was a Sunday night, and Sunday night's live entertainment night, Port Charlotte. And they had this traditional acoustic band coming in, playing very traditional music. And that woman there on the harmonica, she was a singer, and what a harmonica player. Oh, my gosh. So I can't remember her name, and the chap next to her is one of the players, myself. Chap next to me is my daughter Heather's brother, Derek, who's a very gifted jazz guitarist who is now studying at a music academy in Austria. He was accepted to a musical academy in Austria, and that's where he is right now. Brilliant musician. And that massive hair there on the left is my daughter, my daughter Heather. So we were in there, and they were playing a tiny wee bar, packed to the rafters at the time, and phenomenal selection of single malt whiskeys, I might add. I think I dropped a couple of mortgage payments there that night. And the chap was playing Seagull. And of course, one of my acoustics is a Seagull. And I said, "Oh, great that you're playing a Canadian guitar." He says, "Oh, you know about them?" I said, "Well, I got one." Next thing you know, Derek and I are jamming, and we closed the room down that night in this tiny wee pub in Port Charlotte on the island of Islay. It was a brilliant evening, just brilliant.
Fantastic. You have another comment here from Mr. Jim Dick, who asked, "Where'd you buy that Paisley shirt, Garry?"
Well, if you'd like to know, I can give you the information. It's called Sherry's of London, and it's in Soho in London. And I can give you all the contact information. That's why I buy all of my stage gear. I buy there.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Now, I must say before I forget, you are guest number 52 or 53 or something like that on this particular kind of conversation with Dune, right? And you are the first first guest who used the word chap, if I remember correctly. No one else before you have used that term. So it's refreshing to hear that again. It's been a long time since I hear that word, my friend.
There's a few affectations I've never got rid of, and in fact, I'm not really conscious of doing it. When we first came to Canada, I mean, I had a very, very thick Edinburgh accent, and of course, you would, the phrases that I've never really got out of my vocabulary. I mean, if I were to say, okay, I'll give you a phone call tomorrow, I'll say, well, I'll ring you up. And there's a lot of little phrases like that. Yeah. When Norm and I are over in Scotland, a lot of it starts to creep back in, and the accent starts to change a wee bit.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Let's take a look at the next photo. Tell us about this story.
Which one's that? This is one of our trips. This was part of a month-long trip. This is Santorini, which is just south of Athens. It's about a 40-minute plane ride, and maybe one of those beautiful spots on the planet. I was planning a trip and a number of places I wanted to go to, and Norma says, well, I want to go to Santorini, because a good friend of ours had been to Istanbul and Santorini. So I threw that on the agenda. It is an amazingly beautiful spot. And when you see all of these travel photos and postcards of all of these whitewashed buildings with blue roofs, that's the island of Santorini. What fascinated me about Santorini was the fact that it blew up somewhere around 1500 BCE. Santorini blew up. It was a volcano, and many would say that the Santorini explosion and the ensuing tsunami wiped out the entire civilization on the island of Crete. So we went there because I wanted to check it out. Behind me, you'll see that island. That's what's left of the volcano, and it's still active. And we hiked up it, and it was hot. And of course, there's still sulfur belching out of the ground. But that was an amazing experience. And it was just a beautiful way to spend a few days, just sitting there, drinking white wine and eating calamari and just looking over the caldera. That was a beautiful trip. We also went to Istanbul that trip, which is maybe the most fascinating places I've ever been in my life, is Istanbul. I would go back there in a heartbeat. One of the most amazing places, the Blue Mosque, the Hagia Sophia, Topkapi Palace, and all these amazing places to go and see, and the history. One of the great experiences in Istanbul, the Hagia Sophia was an operating mosque. It's now a museum. And so we went through all of the wonderful artifacts and historical things, but they have all of these video screens up in different languages, scrolling verses of the Quran. And I stood there and read it for a while. I thought this is really fascinating, really quite fascinating stuff. So a brilliant trip. If you ask my wife her greatest travel experience, she will say Cappadocia, which is central Turkey, right in the center. And it's like the most amazing badlands you've ever seen in your life. And we stayed in what's called a fairy chimney, which is their version of a hoodoo. And of course, it's all volcanic tufa. So you can carve places out of these fairy chimneys with a spoon. It's so soft. So we stayed in a fairy chimney that had been carved out about 2,000 years ago, and went all around Cappadocia, these wonderful villages, and that was the greatest traveling. So we did Athens, Santorini, Istanbul, Cappadocia, Rome, Naples, Sorrento, Venice. I'm missing a few. There's a few more in there somewhere. And that took a month to do all of that.
That's almost as long as trying to count up the names of your guitars, maybe.
I think you still have more than I do. I know.
Tell us about this one.
This is another one of these wonderful life experiences in life that you never thought would happen. Again, I'm sorry, it's going to be a little bit of a preamble here. Okay, so I apologize for the length this might be. Norm and I were in San Francisco. I was actually there on some meetings. Actually, our meetings were a little north of San Francisco, but we spent a few days. Now, there's a guitar store in Berkeley, California, run by this amazingly interesting guy. He goes by the name Fat Dog, and I think that's his legal name now, because when you make out checks to him, you make the checks out to Fat Dog. And he's got this rather different guitar store in Berkeley, California. And I had been looking for years for a particular guitar, one I had played back in Europe that unfortunately I got rid of. It was an Eco Florentine. And I'm researching, I found out this guy had bought up certain warehouses. And one of them was an Eco warehouse. And I thought, I bet you he's got the parts. He can build me one. I mean, he built an Eco bass for Les Claypool, right? So he can build me a guitar. So I rang him up and he said, well, they're not good guitars. And I said, I know they're lousy guitars, but it's sentimental. It was a guitar I played back in Europe. So that was the end of that. So we go to San Francisco, go to Berkeley, and we pop over to Subway Guitars in Berkeley, and there's Fat Dog. So we're chatting, and when I said, build me something, he said, what do you want? I said, oh, I don't really know. He said, well, how long are you going to be in San Fran? I said, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. Where are you going? So we're heading up to Yountville for some meetings. He said, Yountville, you can see my ranch from there. Okie dokie. Come up and spend the day. Here's the combination to the lock at the gate, and come on up. So Norm and I went up there, and this was, it almost was like time had stopped in 1968. And there were two shacks. One shack was his work room shack, and the other shack is where he lived. So I go into the work shack, and the Fat Dog's there, and I said, what do you got? So we found an old Longhorn body, Tysco Longhorn body. We found a mint condition, brand new, very old stock Dano neck, probably 1956 Dano neck. Said, throw a humbucker and a P90 on there, and got a guitar. Then we go back into the main cabin, and this woman walks in. And she's talking about some this and that and the other thing. And so she and Norma struck up a conversation, and she had been a school teacher. And of course, Norma's a school teacher. So away they having a wonderful talk. Then she says to Norma, so do you folks travel a lot? And Norma says, yeah, we travel, and, here and that. And we're originally from Scotland, because Norma's originally from Scotland as well. And Misty, this lovely woman, said, oh, I spent 3 years in London when I was singing with the Flirtations. And I went, whoa, wait, hold the presses. Let's roll that back. You were singing with the Flirtations. Now, the Flirtations never were known much in North America, but they were huge overseas in Europe. This was one of the girl bands, like Screams, Martha and the Vandellas and all of them. They had left Georgia, and I think it was Georgia, and moved to London, England, to make their fame and fortune in England, and they did very well. Their big hit was a song called Nothing But a Heartache. And I swear I wore the vinyl out on my radio shows in Three-Wing in Zweibrucken. So when she said Flirtations, I turned and I said, Nothing But a Heartache. And Fat Dog said, nobody in the United States would ever know that. And I said, here, I've got it on my iPhone. Do you want me to play it for you? So anyway, she had filled in because the principal singer, Vi, had left I hope I'm getting this right, had left the Flirtations because she got a gig with, I've just lost his name. Oh my gosh, Cliff Richard. Cliff Richard had a TV show in England, and she got the gig being as part of the vocal backup band with Cliff Richard's show. So Misty had filled in for a while, and interestingly enough, researching, I actually found a video clip of her with the Flirtations singing some Top of the Pops show back maybe about 71, 72, which I sent to her. I don't think she'd ever seen that, right? So, but just to finish the story, this other chap came in, and he picked up a guitar off the floor, and believe me, dude, these guitars were almost unplayable. Vintage, and maybe the strings had been put on in 1930 or something like that. Started playing. This guy was a brilliant musician. Oh my gosh, what a player. And Misty started singing, and I looked over at my wife, and Norma's jaw had dropped and her eyes were like saucers. This was full gospel coming out of Misty's mouth, so we jammed. So Misty and I are still in contact to this day. And what an absolutely beautiful person. So we got invited to a jam at Petaluma that night, which was about a 45-minute drive. And I had a dinner meeting with my business associates. And I came so close to blowing that off to go to Petaluma and jam. I knew I had to make the business dinner.
That was the token business meeting for the entire trip, right?
I could be in Petaluma jamming with Matt and Misty. Oh, man.
Yeah. Tell us about this one.
What's this? Oh, I am a diehard Beatles fan. And my dear buddy Trevor Mullen and I many times will compare notes. Trevor is one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met vis-a-vis knowledge about Beatles songs and everything. So one of our trips, I said to him, I've got to get to Liverpool because I've got to do, and Liverpool is just, Beatles is sort of probably one of the top economic contributors to that. So once again, when Norm and I travel, what I like to do is hire a private guide who is knowledgeable to take us places instead of going with a busload of 20 people. I just prefer the one-on-one. So I phoned this one tour company, private guide, and they allowed you to do a bespoke tour, plan it yourself. Here's what I have to see. Here's where I have to go. No, I don't need to go to the Cavern Club as part of the tour because my hotel is right up around the corner from Matthew Street. I can go there myself and blah, blah, blah. One of the things it said was you can arrange an audience in the Casbah. So anybody who knows anything about Beatles history knows that the Casbah is the coffee club where the Beatles first started, not the Cavern. It's predated the Cavern Club. And it was Pete Best's mother, Mona Best, who they bought the house and turned the basement into the Casbah Coffee Club for her sons, or 3 sons, and all of their friends to hang out at, where it would be safe, you know. And it was, soft drinks and coffee, and that was it. And it was totally safe. I thought, well, this is amazing. This is the birthplace of the Beatles. In fact, McCartney, Lennon, and Harrison actually decorated the place, as 16-year-olds and what have you. Okay, so I arranged this. And the last stop on our tour with our guide was here at the Casbah, and that is Rory Best. That's Pete Best's brother. Pete Best, of course, the first drummer for the Beatles. And we had a 45-minute audience with Rory in the Casbah. And the stories, oh my gosh, the things that he shared with us were just unbelievable about the early days of the Beatles before they even hit the Cavern Club. They didn't hit the Cavern Club until I think after they got back from Hamburg in Germany. So the stories are just amazing. So that was a real rush for me, a real rush. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
I think this might be the last photo that you've sent me. So let's switch gear a little bit. And I know we have some video clips to share with our viewers as well.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I hope you don't have a business meeting right after this, Garry.
Are we going overtime, Dune?
We are over the official time, but many of our guests have gone so you are just with the pack there, my friend. We got plenty of time. I'm good. So let's talk a little bit about. Tell us an interesting story that just out of the blue, not related to any photo, while I queue up the next video here for our viewers.
Oh gosh, what kind of story?
What comes to mind that such an interesting little thing?
Oh, well, when it comes to travel, I mean, we just had so many amazing travel experiences, some of them really off the beaten path, which are wonderful. I mean, trekking through the Scottish Highlands in the mist and the rain, and and going through the sheep and walking past the healing coos, those great big hairy cows. That's a lovely experience. In the southern part of Islay, there's an area called the Oa, which is a reserve. So there'll be eagles and all sorts, and you just wander through all of this, and it's just a wonderful experience. It's just wonderful. So, Norm and I've done an awful lot of really interesting travel, and hope to do. So we were actually supposed to be in Spain this year, but thanks to the virus, We just shelved all travel plans for this year, unfortunately. So we're going to pick it up again next year. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a video clip here called Six Convocation Hall. Perhaps we'll show that one right away here. So, yeah.
I'll explain that. This was a piece. Sorry, I have to adjust the old patch here.
Mm-hmm.
This was a piece, I think it was the Con Hall piece. This is Convocation Hall at the University of Alberta. And Sharmila, Ojas, myself, we're doing a piece with a keyboard player by the name of Glenn Halls. Now, Glenn Halls is here in Edmonton. He's got his doctorate in, I think, his musical composition, but he's got his doctorate in music. And maybe the most skilled musician I have ever met in my, let alone played with. And we had composed a piece, and we were playing it at Con Hall. And Glenn's just a brilliant jazz keyboard player. So all of it, Glenn just decided that maybe we should just move away from the planned part and launched off into this wonderful keyboard part, unbeknownst to us. And of course, that's what jamming is all about, right? And then he turned it over to me. Then, okay, fine. And so this was like probably about a 10-minute piece. I've edited it down to maybe about 2 minutes because what really was what really blew me away was Glenn almost knew what I was going to play, because if you listen to what he's doing behind the guitar work, it just fits perfectly. And of course, this was not rehearsed. This is just off the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was a neat moment, I'll tell you.
Let me know if you can hear the sound when I play, and give me a sign if you can't hear it.
Yeah. No sound. Not hearing. No. There you go. Very good.
Fantastic. Yes, you were in your elements there with, I think it was bare feet, and just sort of just get comfortable there and just immerse yourself in it.
Well, it's honestly, it's not very comfortable. These old bones of mine are not used to sitting in a half lotus position on stage, right?
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid that I'm going to need to have some stagehands help me to my feet once I finish playing.
There's a clip here. There's a clip here called "Seven Always Often." So,
Okay.
give us a background and intro on that.
Well, this was a very, very interesting music project that I was asked to sit in. Some very, very talented musicians, vocals, keys, accordion, and trumpet, Zoran Bobic, very gifted musician. Danny McDonald on sax. Dan's well known in town, a wonderful sax player. Bob Walker on bass. Danny Gannett, I believe, is on drums. And what happened was we were doing a lot of, I almost call it gypsy jazz stuff. This was music that when Zoran phoned me and asked me to join, I said, oh, come on, man, you know I can't do this. I'm not a jazz player. This is over my head. I mean, and I can't read music. I don't know how to read a chart. Never did. And he said, I'll teach you. Well, I never learned how to read music, but he at least taught me how to follow a chart. And I had to read everything because I could not commit this stuff to memory. I mean, you start talking about, okay, you know, A flat minor, 7 flat 5. I go, what's that? So I had to actually learn how to put a chord together, which I'd never learned before. So Zoran spent 2 weeks teaching me stuff so I would be ready. And we ended up doing a show. We were doing one song. It's a song called Afro Blue, which is a jazz standard from the late 50s. And he decided we'll do it in the John Coltrane version of it, which totally different time signature from the original on that. And I thought, you know, I wonder what a sitar would sound like, you know, in this particular tune. So we'll give it a go. And it seemed to work out rather well. So that night, Ojas and Sharmila and I did an opening set with more of a classical piece. I think it was Rag Yaman. I think we might have done that night. No, with Gentle Mahini, Rag Gentle Mahini, we did that night. And then we came on with Always Often to do this piece. And now this again was long, so I've edited this right down to maybe a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Well, let's take a listen here. Awesome. I see, you know, a real mix of very traditional, very sort of worldly and very sort of different world up there. And then a little bit more kind of contemporary, obviously with the bass thumping there. That was a great addition as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a really neat piece of music, and what Bob Walker brought to that on the bass was it was wonderful. I mean, all of these guys are just outstanding players.
Yeah, yeah. Now you've sent me some other links to YouTube. I'm going to pull it up here, but while I do that, tell us what if you think about the highlight of your musical kind of journey. What would be one story that sort of outlines that? Well, how about a low light after that? If there was a low light in your musical journey, what might that be like in terms of a story that you can share?
Well, I think we've, playing a gig and there's more people on stage than there is in the audience. I mean, done a few of those over the years, mate.
Yeah.
Highlights. I can't pick out one because I mean some of those things that we've shared today, with playing with Otis and Sharmila certainly is a highlights, a delight, and just getting to play with some of the talented musicians that I've been fortunate enough to be involved with and asked to play with. I can't really, bring out one thing that sticks in mind as head and shoulders above the others. But I remember once playing the biggest audience. I played this was many years ago in Winnipeg, and I was playing with a blues band of all things, because I certainly don't consider myself a blues guitarist. And Peter Smith, I did play in a blues band once. And we played to an audience of thousands on the street. They had closed down Portage Avenue. This was 1971, maybe 71, 73. It was called Get Together, and they would close down Portage Avenue and have all sorts of things and bands playing. And we got up and played. And I mean, it was just a sea of humanity. So that was probably the biggest audience I ever played with. It was terrifying to play in front of that many people. But once you get into the first 4 bars of the first song, the fear disappears and you're into the groove, and it's great. So that was a neat experience. Playing at the Starlight Room with Lex Justice to 600 and something people. We did a few shows with Big Sugar. And so we played the Starlight Room with Big Sugar, and that was an amazing night as well. I've never heard volume like that before. Gordy, when he cranks it, man, he cranks it. And it is loud beyond belief. But that was another highlight, was playing Starlight Room, doing a double bill with Big Sugar. We did a few gigs with them.
Yeah. Now, I have a video here. It is the I'll tell you what it is, and you can introduce it. It's the Edmonton TV performance. We're going to show a bit of that. Shall we start from the beginning, or shall we start somewhere? Probably go beginning.
Now, the thing is, Dune, I think this one's probably 6 minutes long. I didn't edit this, so if you want to gain down so we can talk over it
You bet. Yeah, we'll start playing, and then we'll start.
Well, what happened? Otis had been asked to he was a guest on Omni TV, and they were going to be interviewing him and talking about his experiences. He was a student of Zakir Hussain, who is probably the finest tabla player alive right now. And so I think Otis suggested, well, maybe we'll do something live, performance. So Sharmila had written this piece, and we all put in our 2 bits worth in this piece. It was called Chanchal, and written this piece, and we performed it live on Omni TV. So like I said, it's about 6 minutes long. So you might not want to go through all of it, but if you want to cue it up and
I will, just so that it's sort of on the left and larger. I'm going to take your video out just for a moment here, and even mine out. And I just want it so that it's like that. And so let's hit play here.
Okay. Yeah, it'll come up.
Can you hear it?
Oh yeah, you got sound.
enjoying this so much. I think we're going to keep rolling, my friend.
Okay.
Fantastic. And you said Edmonton TV performance. Which station? I'm just curious now.
That was Omni TV.
Oh, wonderful. You know, I used to watch a lot of Omni TV. Yeah, it's cool. Is it now Omni? It sounds like it's very much global, but it's somehow targeted to Edmonton. Is that what it was?
Oh no, I mean, we were getting calls from Toronto, and as well as it's out there as well. So I know it's across the country. I don't know about outside the country.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I do want to maybe bring up the photos, and we're going to kind of wind our way down to the wrap up here. But before we do that, was there something else that you wanted to share with our viewers that we haven't had a chance to do that yet so far, Garry? Any sentiments or stories or anything at all?
Well, sentiments. This virus thing is hit a lot of our venues so hard, and my big fear is some places just might not survive this. Live music it's a wonderful thing, and it would be just an absolute crying shame to see some of our venues that supports live music go under because of this virus. So, I would, very, very humbly suggest that try to patronize these venues. Go to the performances, go to the gigs, go to the jam sessions, have a nice afternoon or evening at a jam session. When I go to the jams, like I said earlier, fellowship is a really big part of it, because I've made some wonderful friendships going to some of these jams. And, I'll go there and you have a couple of drinks and I'll have supper and, try to support them that way as well. So when live music is allowed again with vocals, because right now you're allowed live music, but vocals are a no-no. You're not allowed to use a wind instrument like a horn or live vocals or verboten. But once that's back again, I really, really hope that people will flock to these venues and provide them with the support they so dearly, dearly need right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that sentiment, Garry, and I'm sure it's shared by many musicians and music lovers in the community. And again, the word community is a word that we have to put in the forefront in these days here. And so thank you for sharing that sentiment. And as we wrap up here, Garry, what I'm going to do is to ask you to maybe speak about how your international travel, in fact, lots and lots of international travels, and you share a lot of story there. And what I'm going to call, for lack of a better term, Western music, and for a lack of a better term, world music. How do those three sort of mix together? What is your take on, your journey with so much of those three things mixed together all of the time in great quantity?
Gosh, I mean, I really haven't given it any thought in that way. You put me on the spot here, buddy. I think that if I'm playing Western music, so let's say, I'm on stage and doing a gig with the Mars Boys or Frantics or whomever, or Lex, for example, I will use scales and phrasings that might be a little different from your standard pentatonic major or minor blues scale, but I'm not sure that's necessarily a result of the influence from Eastern music and Indian music, because you listen to Miles Davis. So when did Miles Davis ever play a standard scale, right? And I've listened to an awful lot of that, but the cultural thing about playing other types of music, like with my dear friends Otis and Sharmila and Shruti, the cultural thing is very important to me, to understand other cultures. That's one of the reasons Norm and I travel so much, is we love to experience other cultures, understand other cultures, food and other. And one thing I do suggest, though, when it comes to that, if you're going to be traveling somewhere that you're not familiar with, do some research, because it can be very, very easy to innocently and unknowingly insult because you don't understand the culture you happen to be visiting at the time. So when we went to Turkey, boy, I did a lot of research on behavior, deportment, et cetera, Even in France, it was, the behavior is different, etc. So I strongly recommend doing a pile of research to understand a wee bit of the culture prior to going, because as I said, you can easily offend somebody, or just out of not knowing what the culture is, And but back to the music thing. Experiencing other cultures' music has been very, very rewarding. I also love Arabic music. That music gets my blood boiling. It's right. It's definitely phenomenal music to play as well. Not easy. but it's wonderful. I don't know if that answers your question or gives you what you're looking for.
You bet. I was just looking for you to reflect on it and tell us what's on your mind, and you definitely have done that. So thank you for sharing that. And so with that, folks, I want to again say thanks to Mr. Garry Keiller here for joining us on this conversation for an hour and a bit, sharing all of the different aspects or dimensions of his journey with us here on Earth, and whether it's music, whether it's culture, whether it's food and architecture, and on and on and on and on. Thank you for sharing all of that with us today, Garry. I hope that our viewers who are watching now and later get a sense of a deeper glimpse into what Garry has been up to, and what Gary's about, and the journey that he's on with Norma there, and in this well-deserved retirement age, and where 8 o'clock, as he said, is not on his clock. 8 o'clock is 8 a.m. is not on there. It's just so with that, thank you so much, Garry.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And to our viewers out there, have a great day. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself, folks, and take good care of one another. And we'll see you next time. Garry, I'll chat with you in the green room there, and we'll celebrate. And it's been a great conversation, my friend.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.